When was the last time you used embossing paste on one of your cards? Today I'm going to show you 2 different ways you can use it to create this project as part of a new video series, Stylish Card Making Techniques with me, Jenny Colosico. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. To start off with, I've got an A2 size panel of £110 sturdy white cardstock. I'm going to be applying a lot of embossing paste to this cardstock and I want to make sure it can hold up. I'm going to be applying it using Altenew's brand new mixed media palette knife set. There's 4 knives in this set. They're great for mixed media projects. I don't do a lot of mixed media, but I do love to use embossing paste, and I'm going to show you how I used 2 of these knives in my card today. They're really great quality. The handle is made out of wood, and I'm going to be first off using this extra long knife. It's absolutely brilliant for A2 size cards, particularly when spreading embossing paste. I'm using Altenew's white embossing paste, and I'm going to be using it with the fine Tulle stencil over this card panel. So I'm just going to lay that down, tape it down onto my crafting mat. This mat is fantastic for wet techniques and stamping. It provides a great surface for the stencil to cling to, and I can also use my palette knife to plonk out some of the embossing paste onto that mat and then easy clean it up later on. I'm going to be colouring my embossing paste first off, and I'm going to be using 2 crisp dye inks today. The first one is Mango Smoothie, and then the second one is Baby Pink, and I'm just going to smush them down a little bit onto my mat. I've dunked out a couple of blobs of the embossing paste with my palette knife. I have put the lid back on the container. Be careful, make sure you don't leave it open too long because it has a tendency otherwise to dry out. And then I'm going to be mixing, just like I'm frosting a cake, that embossing paste in with my palette knife directly on the mat, just to mix in some of that baby pink. If you want a deeper colour, use a darker ink. I was looking for more pale, soft, kind of pastel colours here. So the baby pink was perfect. It does lighten somewhat with that white embossing paste. And then I'm using this large palette knife to just smooth that down over the top of that stencil. I'm doing it about 2/3 of the way down. I'm not going to cover the entire panel with this one colour, and you'll see why in a minute. I do go over it a couple of times just to remove any sort of lumps or edgy bits. I'm not looking for a rough look here. And then I do clean off that palette knife just with a rag before going in and mixing up my Mango Smoothie colour in with the rest of that paste. And what you'll see is I'm adding it over the top, overlapping with that baby pink colour and then smoothing downwards. So I do get a little bit of a soft blend between the 2 colours of the paste, but I do get a very clear mango smoothie coloured paste on the bottom, not sort of dragging it through the baby pink and getting a mixed colour towards the bottom, which is exactly the look I was going for. If you don't have enough paste, and I try not to waste any, you can always bring some more in, mix it up again and add to it. And then what I'm showing you here is I've cleaned off my knife one more time and I'm going in from the top and smoothing down just once, just to drag those colours into each other and get a blend. Now you could leave it like that, but I also like to add a little bit of embossing powder. This is the Golden Peach crisp embossing powder, and I'm sprinkling it just with my finger here and there at random in a few kind of clumps, and then sort of flicking it across the entire stencil. I'm then going to remove my stencil, and that embossing powder will stay adhered to the embossing paste, which will hold it in place. Another great use for this extra long palette knife is for removing panels like this that are a little tougher to pick up with your fingers, and you can also run it down the edge and just pick off any excess embossing paste. I'm not going to leave this to dry naturally because I want to heat that embossing powder. You can absolutely use a heat gun on the embossing paste. Be careful to keep it moving. It will start to bubble, but it does melt that embossing powder. It can take a little bit longer than normal, and you get this gorgeous speckled sheen. Now the star of my card other than the embossing paste, of course, is the Pattern Motif die set. This is a giant die. It's huge. It has 2 layers to it. The larger layer that goes on the bottom, I'm die cutting from Vellum, and then the smaller layer that goes over the top, I'm die cutting from some Nina Solar White cardstock. And I'm going to blend those same 2 ink colours over the top using my large blending tool, and I'm just going to add them randomly. I'm not sort of doing an ombre look or anything here, but I'm going to overlap the colours and you'll see where they meet. You get this kind of nice bright orange colour, and as that dye sort of soaks into the cardstock, you get a really pretty blend, and it looks a bit like a hot mess right now, but when you pop it out you'll see how pretty it is. These dies are, as I said, very large. They will absolutely cover much bigger than an A2 size card. So it's up to you how you want to lay it out. Choose what you want hanging off the edge, what you want to trim off. You can get lots of different looks just with this one die. To adhere these 2 layers together, I'm going to use some liquid glue. There are some pieces that come out and pop out separately that you'll need to adhere like I'm showing you here. And I love my handy tweezers. They've got a super fine point, great for poking out some of the pieces if they're stuck inside, and also finding those tiny pieces, picking them up and adding them on. I'm going to adhere the panel, the die cut to my panel using small foam squares that I've placed all over the back of my die cut, and then, as I say, I'm going to use some large scissors, trim off that excess, and I do leave a few pieces just overhanging as well for extra interest, and you can see that nice blend between those 2 ink colours now close up. For my sentiment, I'm going to use the Simply Hello die. This is quite a sturdy sort of blocky sentiment. Didn't want anything too intricate. I have die cut it from £110 white cardstock again. And I'm using the smallest of the palette knives here. So I'm using a very similar technique to the background, but you'll see because this palette knife is much, much smaller, I can be a lot more detailed and pointed in where I want to put my embossing paste. So I'm going to give the mixed media treatment to this die cut. I'm using the Mango Smoothie first. I'm applying it through the middle, and then I'm going to add that baby pink along the bottom and just gently smooth it down like I did, almost in like a miniature version of what we did before. And then again, clean off my palette knife and then smooth it in. You will see I left some white at the top. That was completely on purpose. I like that kind of blend of colours that you get. And because of the fine tip on that palette knife, you can even get in between those letters in the sentiment just to shave off any excess. I added a little bit of golden peach sprinkled embossing powder, heated it up as well. And then I'm going to stack it on top of 3 other die cuts made from £110 cardstock that I've stacked together with liquid glue. That creates more of a chipboard feel, gives it a bit more sturdiness, and helps to flatten it out if there's some warping from the heat embossing. If you did get any embossing paste where you didn't want it, I found that this retractable eraser is actually really good for removing sort of dirty marks and also a little bit of excess embossing paste. So I highly recommend having a go with that if you've got any marks you're not happy with. To embellish, I'm going to keep it subtle. I'm using these satin white sequins from Altenew, which are just gorgeous, perfect for adding a little bit of shine here and there without overpowering the rest of the card. And that finishes my project. I hope this inspired you to grab that embossing paste. Don't forget to subscribe to Altenew's channel if you don't already. And I'll be back with another stylish card making techniques with Jenny video really soon. Bye.
Hello crafters, Jen here. For more tips, techniques, tutorials, and to discover which paper crafting products are right for you, subscribe to Altenew's YouTube channel. Make sure to hit the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Thanks for watching.